You're listening to the micro version of the Savage Lovecast. www.savagelovecast.com.
If you're stuck in a relationship quandary, or if you're looking for sexual harmony, well, there's nothing you can't ask on the Savage Lovecast.
A few quick items before we get to your Q's and my A's this week. First, a huge thank you to everyone who marched this weekend in Washington, D.C. and all around the country. Any day that tens of thousands of people gather in front of the White House, Trump's White House, to chant shame, shame, shame is a good day. The Women's March, the March for Science, the People's Climate March, good days. This weekend, tens of thousands of LGBT people marched in the streets, taking part in the Equality March in D.C. and satellite marches around the country. And that made this particular good day, last Sunday, all the sweeter. Of course, queer people have been a big part of every march since Trump was inaugurated, but it was important to see queer people out there marching under our own banners. So a big thank you to everyone who marched. And if you want to see the creativity and humor of the LGBTQLFTSAQNB, etc. community on full display, look up Equality March on Twitter and check out the photos of the signs and the t-shirts. And because it's June, just because it's June, queer pride parades are busting out all over. That was a little musical theater reference there in honor of the Tony Awards, which also took place on Sunday. Congrats to all the winners and all the nominees. Anyway, whenever June rolls around, when June busts out, I inevitably get a burst of emails and calls from clueless straight people, new listeners and new readers, wondering why we have to have gay pride parades. You don't see straight people marching in the streets to celebrate straight pride, do you? They all inevitably say. A few quick points. We call them queer pride parades now, not gay pride parades, or we call them just pride parades. And we have pride parades and you don't, because straight people aren't shamed for being straight. But gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans, two-spirited, queer, questioning, asexual, non-binary, genderqueer, gender fluid, etc., et al., we are shamed for not being straight and or cisgendered. Queer people taking pride in our diverse sexualities and gender expressions are flipping the bird to those who have attempted and continue to attempt to shame us for being different. And we are also setting an example for those queer people out there who are still struggling with or paralyzed by the shame that's been heaped up on them. As for straight pride parades, well, I think you kind of actually need them. I think that would be a good idea. There's a whole chapter in American Savage, my last book, called The Straight Pride Parade. Little quote from the book. Although straight people don't suffer from the kind of institutional sexual repression or persecution that gay people still do, straight people are subject to subtler forms of sexual repression, even coercion. Straight people move through life thinking about sex constantly, always horny and always slightly frustrated, which is a feature of human sexuality and not a bug. We are wired, most of us, to be horny all the time. But social convention requires straight people and gay people to act as if sex were the last thing on our minds. And this can be exhausting. People under that kind of pressure desperately need pressure release valves. And those are precisely the kinds of pressures to conform to certain romantic scripts, to live with sexual and reproductive choices that others have made for you, that can make a person want to pull on a pair of assless chaps, smear glitter on their tits, and march down the middle of the street. Those are the kinds of pressures that cry out for some form of organized mass release. Now, personally, I'd like to see more straight people out there celebrating your diverse sexualities and gender expressions. Lesson from the Queer Pride Parade? We have nothing to be ashamed of, first and foremost, but also that there's more than one way to be queer and nothing wrong with being straight. The Queer Pride Parade does not say nobody should be straight. Everyone should be gay is not one of the lessons. If you could, straight people, if you could pull together a straight pride parade that wasn't telling people that everyone should be straight or that no one should be queer, if the lesson was there's more than one way to be straight and straight sexuality is diverse in its expression as well, I would go to your pride parade and I would cheer for your straight asses and your straight assless chaps and your straight tits smeared with straight glitter from the sidewalk. And finally, a brand new sex fact before our sex show begins. According to the results of a recent study, women who got more sleep had more and better sex and vice versa. So if you want to have more and better sex, get more sleep. And if you want to get more sleep, have more and better sex. Kind of a catch-22, and this was a study of women between the ages of 50 and 79, aka menopausal women. So it may not apply to all, but I have a hunch it will. And if you want to read the results of the study, go to sciencedaily.com and search for Better sleep can lead to better sex. Okay, coming up today on the micro edition of the Savage Lovecast, your questions, my answers, and on the subscription-only ad-free Magnum edition of the Savage Lovecast, which you can subscribe to at savagelovecast.com. Professional dominatrix Justine Cross joins us to talk about kinky parties, how to find them, and how to comport oneself at one. We want to thank Audible for their support of the Savage Lovecast. For a free 30-day trial, go to audible.com/savage. This episode of the Savage Lovecast is brought to you by Casper, an online retailer of premium mattresses for a fraction of the cost because everyone deserves a great night's sleep. Get $50 off any mattress purchase by going to casper.com/savagelove and entering the promo code SAVAGELOVE.
This episode is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the easiest way to create a beautiful website, blog, or online store for you and your ideas. Squarespace features an elegant interface, beautiful templates, and incredible 24/7 customer support. Try Squarespace at squarespace.com and enter offer code SAVAGE at checkout to get 10% off. That's squarespace.com, offer code SAVAGE.
Hi, I'm a 17-year-old high schooler, and before I start my question, I would just like to say everyone has their shit. Me and my partner have been in an on and off relationship for about 3 years now. It's been pretty consistent, but there has been a few off points. Right now, we're both really happy, but we have two differentiating views when it comes to sex. For instance, I enjoy monogamy. I enjoy the security of knowing that you have like a secure partner, while she believes sex to not be an intimate thing and would like to kind of do it freely. Now, the reason for this call is because she kind of asks sometimes if she could sleep around. And since we are in high school, we do have summer vacation. And she's asking if this summer she can kind of get a free pass to kind of fuck whoever she wants over the summer. So my question is, and I don't control her body, of course, but she's going to respect my opinion if I would rather she wouldn't. So my question is, do you think I should say yes, consent to this? Or is what I'm saying totally unhealthy now?
You're 17 years old. You've been with your girlfriend, your partner, for 3 years. So that means you've been with her since you were 14 years old, maybe even 13 years old. And you guys are not on the same page about a very fundamental and basic issue, monogamy. No value judgments here around this. Monogamy is the right choice and the right relationship model for some folks, and it is the wrong choice and the wrong relationship model for other folks. The only big difference between the monogamous and non-monogamous is that non-monogamous people haven't typically persecuted or thrown monogamous people in prison or executed them for being monogamous, whereas the reverse, historically, has occasionally been true. So I don't know how long you've been listening to the show, but perhaps you've heard me talk about the importance of sexual compatibility when it comes to choosing a romantic partner who's also your sexual partner. There are some people out there who have romantic relationships that have no sexual component. Maybe they're asexual. Maybe they're in a companionate, intimate, romantic relationship or marriage that's satisfying for both, but there's no sex. But when it comes to a romantic and sexual relationship, which is arguably the kind of relationship that you are in or would like to be in, being on the same page about something like monogamy and other things like perhaps kinks or frequency is important and is something that you have a right to prioritize in that relationship. Sexual exclusivity is something that you, caller, you have a right to prioritize sexual exclusivity because you would like to be in a sexually exclusive relationship. Right you are that you do not control your girlfriend's body and she gets to make her own choices about what she does with her body. You do, however, control your body, and you get to make your own choices about what you're going to do with your body, including whose body you're going to press your body against. And if your girlfriend is choosing to do things with her body that make you feel like you don't want to press your body against hers, that make you feel like that's not the right choice for you anymore, you are free to end this relationship. And that's not about trying to control your girlfriend. And that's not necessarily about trying to control your girlfriend. That's just prioritizing being on the same page around this issue, around monogamy. Now, being monogamous may be a price of admission that your girlfriend is willing to pay to be with you. And perhaps that's been the case while this off and on relationship has been going on for the last 3 years. Although arguably maybe she's turned it off sometimes so that she could mess around with other people. I don't know. I don't know what those circumstances were where it was off. But if your girlfriend would rather be with you than get to share her body with other people or sleep with other people or be polyamorous or have other sex partners or other experiences, you can allow her to make that choice. But if that's not a price of admission that she is willing to pay, she may choose to exit the relationship. Conversely, she may choose to sleep with other people despite your feelings about it. And if that's not a price of admission that you're willing to pay, then you can choose to take your body and leave this relationship. Zooming ahead maybe 5-10 years, ask yourself how many people who are 27 that you know are with people that they were dating when they were 13 or 14 years old. And the answer is probably 0. Or maybe 1 or 2, perhaps, tops. But it is extremely rare for people to be with their high school sweethearts forever and indefinitely. So maybe this relationship has run its course. Maybe what your girlfriend is telling you when she's asking for this pass for this summer is that you guys are diverging on this issue in an important way. And you can struggle to hold on to this relationship, and she may do what she feels she must do or make a different kind of choice for herself without your consent, and it could get very explosive. I would recommend, rather than you guys pulling away from each other and it becoming explosive, that you guys part, perhaps. That maybe this summer is the summer that this conflict can no longer be kicked down the road. That this disagreement that you guys have about this fundamental issue, that this sexual incompatibility that has perhaps popped up again and again over the last 3 years as you guys have negotiated your connection, can no longer be finessed. And it may be time to say, you know what? We shared 3-4 great years. We will always be friends. We will always be important to each other. But maybe we should end it as you have before, as you've ended it before. And ending it doesn't mean you can't pick it up again at the end of the summer. But again, ask yourself how many 27-year-olds you know who are still with the women or girlfriends or boyfriends that they were with at 14.
Hi, Dan. This is 2 girls in their mid-20s living in New York City. We just had an odd experience. We were having dinner in the Lower East Side outside, and we saw something rather disturbing we wanted to ask your opinion on. And now my friend is going to tell you the details. So my friend and I were on a best friend date, and we were eating outside, as she probably mentioned. And I happened to notice that there was the tip of a penis, like peeking outside of the doorway to an apartment. I didn't see anybody's face, but I directed my friend's attention to what was happening, and we both watched him come, which was very disturbing and gross. And we're feeling a little confused about our emotions right now. So now she's going to ask you some questions. So we have 2 questions. The first one is, what is the right protocol in this situation? Is this something that we should alert someone in the area, or is this something where we should just kind of say, oh, that's a strange kink that we witnessed? And the second question is just what's the drive behind this? Like, what kind of compels someone to do this?
Thanks for calling. Thanks for sharing. Nice to meet you both. The right protocol, in answer to your first question, alert someone in the area. I don't know how effective that would be. You could send up a flare. You could call the police. By the time the police arrived, by the time the authorities were on the scene, it's highly likely that the culprit would have beat a retreat, would have withdrawn from the scene, and you probably wouldn't be able to identify him just by the tip of his penis sticking out of a doorway that I imagine wasn't his doorway. If there's someone doing this, they're probably opportunistically seizing someone else's doorway so as not to implicate themselves with their name on the lease and everything. So unfortunately, the advice that I would give someone in this circumstance would be to avert your eyes, to deny this exhibitionist the pleasure of your attention, which is, of course, what the exhibitionist was seeking when they poked their penis out from that doorway. Of course, if the door was close enough, you could have run at it and slammed it, but then you might have been guilty of the greater offense. And answer your second question, what's the drive behind this? Well, exhibitionism. Some people like to expose themselves to other people. It's not okay to expose yourself to other people in a non-consensual fashion. It's not okay to pop your penis out of a door and waggle it at a couple of best friends who are having a best friend date and just trying to enjoy their lunch. And there's nothing about enjoying their lunch that some other person's penis that they didn't ask to see is going to enhance. So yeah, not okay. And that's what compels people to do this. Exhibitionists are compelled to expose themselves because they're exhibitionists, because it makes their crazy dicks hard or their crazy pussies really wet. And it had the desired impact. You were interested. You were intrigued. You couldn't look away. I don't think I'd be able to look away either. I also wouldn't be able to slam the door. And you were disturbed by this site. And I think that that's often what goes on for people who engage in this kind of exhibitionism. People who expose themselves, from a car or in a car or on a subway or, out a window or into somebody's window. I think it's often expressly done to unnerve that person, to make them feel unsafe in their own home or unsafe on the streets or unsafe on a date with their best friend. But, I dinked around on the internet a little bit, and there's this survey of 185 exhibitionists cited in this article, and they were asked, these exhibitionists, how would you have preferred a person to react if you were to expose your privates to him or her? And the top response was, would want to have sexual intercourse, 35.1%. Obviously, that's not the reaction that you and your best friend had. The next response was no reaction necessary at all, nearly 20%. Show your privates, also 15%, admiration, any reaction at all. And only, as it turns out, a small handful of exhibitionists chose anger or disgust or fear. 4% for anger, disgust, 0.5% for fear. So I may have to revise my beliefs about exhibitionists because, as I just said, I've long believed that most exhibitionists are trying to make people feel unsafe in their own skin or unsafe in their own homes. But at least exhibitionists self-report that not to be the case. They're hoping that the sight of that penis poking out from behind that doorway would inspire you and your friend to settle up your bill at the restaurant and take a running leap at that dick, which seems like an irrational expectation on the part of that exhibitionist if that was indeed what he expected you two might do in reaction. I'm sorry that happened to you. Let it go, shake it off, have another drink, and if it happens again and the door is nearby, you always have the option of sticking your leg out, putting a foot on it, and slamming it shut. This episode of the Savage Lovecast is brought to you by Casper, the online retailer of premium mattresses for a fraction of the cost. Casper is revolutionizing the mattress industry by cutting the cost of dealing with resellers and showrooms and passing those savings directly on to you. Casper's mattress is an obsessively engineered mattress at a very fair price. It's made of supportive memory foam for a sleep surface with just the right sink and just the right bounce. Plus, its breathable design sleeps cool to help you regulate your temperature through the night. And Casper's mattresses are made right here in the USA. You can buy a Casper mattress easily online, risk-free, free delivery in the USA and Canada, painless returns within a 100-day period, so you don't have to lie down in a showroom, which we did the last time we bought a mattress, and you can save an additional $50 toward your mattress purchase by going to casper.com/savagelove. Don't pay full price. Go to casper.com/savagelove and enter the promo code SAVAGELOVE. That's casper.com/savagelove and promo code SAVAGELOVE for $50 off your mattress. Terms and conditions apply.
Hi, Dan. This is a long-time listener, first-time caller. 27, gay male, married in New York City. I have a really specific fetish that I'd like you to try to help me with. I top my husband pretty much 100% of the time. And when we have three-ways or we invite somebody else in there, I just really like to be the sub-bottom. And I really, really do want to be like a sub-bottom for an older gentleman while it's being filmed. And that's my fetish. How do I go about finding this older gentleman? And side note, my husband's fetish is filming me while all of this is going on.
I was listening to your question and I kept waiting for the problem to arise. You have this fetish, you're 27 years old, with your husband, you're always the top, but you would like to be topped yourself. And for brand new listeners, The top is the person who fucks someone during anal intercourse, the insertive partner, the penetrator, not the penetratee. You would like to be topped yourself by an older gentleman while you're being filmed. And it turns out that your husband's kink is filming you being topped by an older gentleman, as your kink is being topped by an older gentleman while being filmed. So that's some hand in glove or fist and ass perfection right there. So all you got to do is find that older top, and you're in New York City. You are not in Des Moines, Iowa. You are in the world capital of kinky older guy tops who would be probably only too thrilled to rail a hot 27-year-old guy while his bottom husband films him being topped. Put an ad out, hang a shingle, get on Craigslist, get on Recon, get on OkCupid, go to a gay bar, leave the fucking house. You're in New York City. This is not going to be hard for you to arrange. So unless you had some ulterior motive in directing this call to me specifically, which I don't think you did, my advice to you boils down to you're in New York City. Leave the fucking house. This will not be hard for you to find, and this seems to be entirely frictionless. There is no problem here. What you want is also what your husband wants. You just need to find that third who would like to play this part for you, and that is not going to be a problem.
This episode of the Savage Lovecast is brought to you by Squarespace. Whether you need a landing page, a beautiful gallery, a professional blog, or an online store, it's all included with your Squarespace website. Creating your site with Squarespace is a simple, intuitive process. You can add and arrange your content and features with the click of a mouse. Design a great-looking online store with Squarespace's award-winning templates, customizable settings, and more, all without a single plugin. It's incredibly easy to use, but if you need help, they offer 24/7 customer support. Start your free trial today at squarespace.com and enter offer code SAVAGE to get 10% off your first purchase. That's squarespace.com and enter offer code SAVAGE.
Hey, Dan. I'm in a bit of a conundrum. I am 25 and my fiance is 27. I have been with many partners, somewhere around 80, and I am the only sexual partner that he has ever had. We are both open and honest about this, and we both know where we stand. But he does this thing where he will sort of be having a natural conversation, and then he'll ask me about a sexual thing. You know, it'll kind of pepper in the conversation. He'll be like, oh, yeah, this happened one time. But he'll want such detail, like such scrutinizing detail, where he'll be like, tell me exactly what happened. What did this person look like? What day was it? What month was it? And you know what? I've drawn the line where I've said that I don't feel comfortable giving the person's name because, well, you know, that person and I were consenting partners at the time. I don't have their consent now to give away their personal information. We have recently moved to a town where some of those somebodies are still walking around. And the other thing is, you know, months, dates, I don't really remember. So I've put my foot down many times and said, I don't want to share this information. And he will kind of sulk around and kind of be moody until he pinches it out of me. And I don't like that. I don't think that's great. He feels that because he is soon to be my husband, he is entitled to this information. I feel that this happened before he was ever around. So, you know, I'm not giving him no information. I just don't think I should give him all the information. He says he does it just out of sort of like an interest thing, a vicarious living maybe, a jealousy thing. I don't know. What's going on here?
So if you're a regular listener, you've probably heard me say that relationships aren't depositions. You don't have to answer every question. You're also not a business that's being acquired by some outside firm. You don't have to disclose everything. You don't have to open the books. There are some things you can keep private. But I had a follow. So you know all that. So of course you already have
of course.
Your listener. You know, you've probably heard me say exactly those things before. So I'm calling you back because I have a follow-up question about your boyfriend's demeanor when he's pumping you for details about guys who've pumped you previously. You say he gets sulky and sad when you won't share the details. Does he get flushed and aroused when you do?
No, that would be fun and exciting, but no.
Oh, that's too bad. So it's kind of a morbid curiosity on his part, and it doesn't make him happy and his unhappiness makes you unhappy?
By my best guess, when I try to talk to him about it, I think I ask him if it's a vicarious living thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because he says he is jealous of all the experiences I've had, of all the, fun, crazy shenanigans that involved genitals and orgies and whatever. So he wants to ask me about it, but yeah, like I don't feel comfortable sharing names or dates or anything like that, because sometimes he does run into people who I've had sexual contact with, and I don't really feel comfortable sharing their personal details.
Right.
And
I
then
think I think it's actually considerate of him and his feelings and those social interactions not to necessarily disclose that these guys you fucked, because that could make him feel insanely awkward around these dudes if he's going to run into them in the place where you live now. I do want to challenge something you said, though, that these people you've messed around with in the past didn't consent to you now disclosing these things about them. I think each of us have a right to our experiences and our histories and a right to share them. I think we shouldn't be assholes. I think we shouldn't be inconsiderate of someone else's right to privacy. I think we can be discreet, but I don't think we have to go through life never sharing X detail because Y person didn't give us permission in writing to share it in perpetuity. That we have a right to our own histories and to share them. And we want to be sensitive, we want to be thoughtful, we want to be considerate.
But even to their name?
I don't know. Maybe. Like, I don't think I would hesitate if somebody said, did you fuck that guy? If I fucked that guy, to say, yeah, I fucked that guy.
Yeah, but it's beyond that. Like, because I'll say that. Like, I'll say, yeah, of course I've had intercourse with this person, but he'll be like, how big was his penis? Did you come? How many times did you have intercourse? What kinds of sexual things did you do? And I'm like, I don't really want to go into that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll share stories, but I just won't attach names. So, like, should I be giving him names?
What if each time he started doing that, you were like, his penis is average. We had sexual intercourse 3 times. I was on top. And it was just the same, like, 5 details just to communicate to him that he's not going to get the info out of you. But I'm calling because I'm curious why he wants this info. Maybe it does turn him on and he's embarrassed to tell you it turns him on. If it's not that, and it is that he's jealous that you've had all these sexual adventures that he hasn't, I would encourage you both to start thinking about how you can have sexual adventures as a couple. Like, if what he feels he missed out on was a certain degree of sexual adventuring, not sowing the wild oats bullshit, but being open to possibility and experimentation and chance, that's something a couple can do together without involving anyone else, but also with involving other people if you so choose. If what he feels is like FOMO, fear of missing out, because he kind of did, how would you feel if you had only one sex partner your whole life? Would you feel like you missed out?
Of course, yeah. And I think I'll mention this to him because I've been bringing it up that I am totally fine giving him a hall pass. I think it would be okay as long as it wasn't, necessarily romantic.
Well, no, I wasn't even suggesting that. Like, there are sexual adventures, like I said, I really want to emphasize this because I don't want people to always think I'm the enemy of a monogamous commitment in any form. But if you go to him and say, okay, if you're not like some secret cuckold and just hearing about your girlfriend, soon to be wife, fucking other guys isn't a turn on for you, if it's about you missed out and I had these sexual adventures and you didn't, and you want to hear about them to live through them vicariously, let's put an end to that. Like, I fucked 80 guys. The dicks were big, the dicks were little, the sex was good or the sex was bad, and there were certain like kinks or adventures that I had, just like all in the past. What can we do going into the future that's going to make you feel like, even if you only have sex with me for the rest of your life, you didn't have a life without adventure, sexual adventure, and impulse and spontaneity? Like, what can we do? Is it, go to a sex club where other people are fucking and just fuck each other? Are there kinks you want to explore? Is there, are sex outside where we might get caught? Like, what can we build into our sex life so you feel like you have, even if it's only with me, a kicking, rocking, fun, crazy sex life full of things that, you can look back on one day or tell friends about with my consent, perhaps, and have your own stories? Because right now it sounds like he has stories. You have stories.
Yeah, that's a really good insight, and that's probably really, really accurate because he just wants to hear the stories,
mm-hmm.
and he finds them interesting. But I'd love to give him his own stories and like be able to, and maybe be sexy, I guess, to call back on them and be like, "Ooh, remember that time we did this?" Exactly.
And there are ways that 2 people can go out, only have sex with each other, and still have stories to tell each other that the other isn't aware of. Like if you went to some, crazy public sex environment and you both split up for a little bit, not to touch other people, no touching other people, but to observe and to masturbate on your own in a corner. And then you can circle back to each other and fill each other in on the crazy stuff you saw the other sex havers doing. Like voyeurs are allowed and welcome, particularly if they're an opposite sex couple, at a lot of sex parties, swingers events, public sex craziness. And you can have that kind of adventure together, where there are other people and other experiences that he can have and live through vicariously that aren't necessarily yours. But I think the most important thing is show that guy a good time. Get him out of the fucking house. Go fucking a public park. Drill down on what his kinks are or what they might be and things that you might be able to do together. And then he'll have stories to tell, if not you, then his best friend or whoever it is that he's comfortable sharing these kinds of stories with and you're comfortable with him sharing those kinds of stories.
That sounds like a really great idea. So I should let him in on the names and just kind of tell him a bit, and then otherwise maybe just focus back on making stories with him. And then when he asks me, I can be like, yeah, but this was better. Remember this time we did this? That was cooler.
Exactly. You had a lot of crazy sex, right? And people have it in their heads that once you're in a relationship, the crazy sex stops, that sexual adventuring is something you get out of your system before you're in a relationship. I am here from the future to tell you that that is not true. It doesn't have to be true. You don't have to die together sexually after 5 or 10 years, that you can have sexual adventures together. It's invigorating. And you can help him create stories that he can cherish and be proud of and one day share.
I look forward to doing that.
And then call us back and tell us all about it.
Thanks, Dan Savage.
Audible has an unmatched selection of audiobooks, original shows, news, comedy, and more. Audiobooks are great to listen to when you're driving, on the subway or bus, doing chores around the house, or at the gym. For our listeners, Audible is offering a free 30-day trial. Just go to audible.com/savage. Please be sure to go to audible.com/savage and browse their unmatched selection of audio programs. Download a title for free and start listening. It's that easy. One audiobook to consider is Unwanted Advances, Sexual Paranoia Comes to Campus by Laura Kipnis, feminist cultural critic and NU professor, also the author of Against Love, a hilarious polemic, and Men, Notes from an Ongoing Investigation, all also available at Audible. But you're going to want to read or have read to you Unwanted Advances by Laura Kipnis. And you can download that title for free by going to audible.com/savage. Once again, for that 30-day free trial, go to audible.com/savage. That's audible.com/savage.
Hi, Dan. I'm a straight, engaged female. I'm getting married in 2 months. A year ago, while I was engaged, I kissed someone else. I felt terrible, but I decided not to tell my fiancé about it. I felt too much guilt to think it would ever happen again. I recently found out that my maid of honor knows about the kiss, as do a couple of our mutual friends. They don't know I know. The story has been exaggerated, and I'm nervous that it will get more out of hand and someone will tell my fiancé. I'm wondering if I can keep this secret from him, but somehow address it with the other people. I really don't want to hurt him or cause him to call off the wedding. What should I do?
Call me old-fashioned, but didn't it used to be that moment where you would forsake or forsook or whatever the fuck all others was when you got married at the altar, not when you got engaged? Some people, when they're still engaged, are getting a last bit of wild oats sewing out of their system, not necessarily cheating, but maybe kissing or running around or staring down temptation, which you did. And that was something that you could stuff down the memory hole and you didn't have to necessarily share with your fiancé. So I support your basic approach, your initial approach to this. You did something stupid and risky and that you shouldn't have, and you felt terrible about it. And it's been a year and you've never done it again. And the lesson that you learned from that kiss was, despite the fact that you probably still want to kiss other men from time to time and fuck other men too, that's not something that you are going to do or allow yourself to do, because you are seriously committed to this man and you want to be with him and be exclusive with him. So you walked up to the precipice, you stared into the abyss, and you turned and walked away. And all that happened at that precipice, all you did at the abyss, at the edge of the abyss, was get a fucking kiss. And here you are a year later on the rack about it because some other folks know. And because of gossip and games of telephone or games of text or Snapchat or Kik or however the fuck that game works now, the story has been exaggerated and blown up. And now what do you do? Well, you could go to these other people and beg them not to say anything to your fiance and try to shut this down. And all you'll be communicating to them is that this is big and scary and potentially very consequential if they should reveal it to your fiance of their own accord. For what reason? Well, maybe you say or do something at some point in the future that pisses them off. Maybe one of them gets caught cheating, and in a drunken night of anger, they decide to implicate everybody else that they know who's ever not gotten caught cheating. Who knows? But going to these other people and begging for their silence is really to hang the sword of Damocles over your head. How long can you live that way once you're married? How long can you live with that tension of knowing he may find out at any moment? You may go to all your friends and beg them not to say anything, and they'll agree not to say anything, and it'll come out at the bachelor party or the bachelorette party or the rehearsal dinner or right before the service or immediately after the service. Who the fuck knows? If your fiance is so psycho or angry that you fear telling him this, you should fear him finding this out the day before you get married, a year after you get married, the day after your first kid is born, before your 10th anniversary. Tell him fucking now. Go to him yourself. Get out in front of it and say, a year ago, I was at a party, I did something stupid, I kissed somebody else. That has now blown up into something it is not, because people who weren't there have repeated it. People found out about it. I was going to do what reasonable, rational advice columnists advise people in my situation to do. Advice columnists like not just crazy, sex radical, non-monogamous Dan Savage, but dear Prudence at Slate, who's prudent about these things and not burden you with that, not tell you, and assume that if you had done something similar, you would have the courtesy and the decency to never do that again, but also to not tell me. But I'm telling you because I want you to hear it from me and not hear it from one of our friends in anger when a friendship is collapsing around us, or not just have it get back to you anonymously. So I'm telling you now, before we get married. If the bastard calls the wedding off because you told him that you kissed somebody and regretted it and have never done it again, well, maybe the wedding shouldn't have happened in the first place, because life is long and shit is complicated and people step out on each other and people make mistakes on business trips or because of life stressors, or one partner's libido crashes for a while because of who knows what, or maybe a health issue, and somebody steps out, and these things happen. And you want to be with someone who can roll with those punches. And I think that you want to have a punch like that, not to go out and intentionally cheat on a partner to see what the reaction might be in advance, but to be with someone long enough before you marry them for you to determine that they can roll with the punches that life inevitably is going to bring, and that your marriage isn't this thing that's so fucking fragile that the first time one of those punches lands, the whole thing shatters and collapses around you. So you go tell him, you go sit him down and say, something happened while we were engaged, I want to tell you. And also say to him, if anything happened while we were engaged that you wanted to tell me, you can tell me now, or you can allow me to live in the blissful ignorance that I was attempting to allow you to live in as a courtesy and because I love you. And then see how he reacts. And if he reacts badly, if he has a huge fucking meltdown and a tantrum and cancels the wedding, that sounds like a bullet dodged.
Hey, Dan. I live in an expensive city, but get a great deal on rent because I live with a spoiled trust fund kid who owns the apartment. He never leaves the house, smokes weed constantly, and has a severe video game addiction. He's an actively unkind person, too. He's not aware of his toxic behavior, and it's been getting worse the past few years. All of our friends have felt the sting of his lazy lifestyle and narcissistic tendencies and have been rightfully distancing themselves. I unfortunately live with him and work from home, so it's much harder for me to limit exposure. I'm in the process of saving money and moving out, so that'll solve that part. However, the reason for my call concerns his romantic relationship with his girlfriend. She's 23, he and I are both 30. He's an emotionally cruel person, and he's a cruel partner. Over the year and a half of their relationship, I have watched him mold her into a version of himself, never allowing her to have opinions or expressions of her own. He will publicly ridicule her and consistently put her down, and she always takes his shit willingly. Once she was going to boil water in a pot, and he called her an idiot for putting in too much water. Then after she dumps them out, he called her an idiot again for not putting in enough. He's also unwilling to participate in any activity she wants to do, so it has forced her to completely change her lifestyle to match his. Their dates now involve sitting on the couch while she watches him play video games. His behavior is abhorrent, and it's feeling like emotional abuse to me. Sometimes I'll defend her when he puts her down in my presence, but that only encourages him to ridicule her more. Keep in mind this man was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, has never had to work, has no empathy, and has a strict policy of his way or the highway. He represents Trump's America, as he will reject proven facts if they do not align with his opinion. I'm all about butting the fuck out, but my instincts are telling me to intervene on this one. What do you think? Is it my duty to say something? And if so, do I speak to him or her? And what do I say?
The time to say something to this guy's girlfriend was a year and a half ago when this guy met this girl. You've known him a lot longer. You've lived with him a lot longer. You knew him to be this obnoxious, awful, toxic piece of shit. Now, maybe you had never seen him break down a girlfriend before and destroy her self-esteem and reduce her to this person who will sit on a couch and watch him play video games all night. So maybe you weren't aware of what she was signing up for and how she could be abused coming in, but you watched this unfold. And the time to speak up was months ago, months and months and months ago. So now you're on your way out the door and you're asking me if over your shoulder on the way out the door, you should say something to her. Yes. Oh my God, you should fucking say something to her. You should apologize to her for not saying something sooner and then tell her, look, you deserve better. He is a piece of shit. I am not making a play for you. I'm not hitting on you. He is a piece of shit. Look at what he does to you. I've watched what he does to you, the way he treats you. It's emotionally abusive. And you need to get out, just as I needed to get out a lot sooner myself. And I was just his fucking roommate, and I needed to get the fuck out because he's awful and toxic. You, his girlfriend, are being exposed to much greater levels of his awfulness and toxicity because you're in an emotional relationship with him and he is shredding you. He is emotionally abusing you. And you need to get the fuck out. And then say to her, look, I stuck around too long as roommate because it was a really good deal. Because he's a rich kid with a great apartment. This is an expensive city. I stayed here too long. And in a way, maybe my presence in his life led you to believe he might be a decent guy because he's had the same roommate for such a long time. And maybe just by being here, I was vouching for him on some level as a human being. And you got to know that that's not true. I think he's an awful human being. And I was just here for my own self-interest. I was here because he was a rich kid, great apartment, made it possible for me to live in the city. But I am getting out now. And I don't know, you should say to her, I don't know what reasons you're still here. But if it's the same reason I stuck around, rich kid, nice apartment, big city, it's not worth it. I feel diminished and degraded by the time I've spent with him as my roommate. I have watched him degrade you and emotionally abuse you and said nothing. And for that, I apologize, or said very little because it was a risk to me. And for that, I apologize. But you got to get out. You got to get away from this guy, just as I am getting out and I am getting away from this guy. Can't save her. She can choose to stay. People choose to stay in shitty relationships for all sorts of stupid reasons. He makes a good living. He has a nice apartment. I am in terror of being alone. I would rather be with somebody awful than be by myself. Maybe my love can fix him. People stay in shitty relationships for all sorts of stupid reasons. The odds that you will speak to her, that you will make a beautiful speech or play her this recording and I'll make the beautiful speech and the scales will fall from her eyes and she'll walk out the door and never see this guy again are very low. This may go on for a while longer. But this kind of conversation, this kind of confrontation that I think you're going to have with her, even if she leaps to his defense, it plants a seed. It helps somebody shift their perspective. They begin to examine their relationship from outside their own duo dynamic, and they begin to perceive it as others might perceive it. It gives them that third eye on the other side of the room that sometimes people lack, and sometimes people are still in these kind of shitty relationships because they lack. So even if you make a speech, even if you have a big conversation with her and it gets heated and nothing changes immediately, the change could still come in 6 months or a year's time. But fingers crossed that she goes into the bathroom and grabs her toothbrush and walks out of that asshole's apartment with you.
Dan, calling about your last episode where there's a woman who has extremely sensitive nipples and for some reason felt ashamed to tell her now fiancé that she doesn't enjoy them being played with. Your explanation was that she should be very frank and admit to her lie of omission. I think another option for her is to tell a little white lie. People's sensitivity changes over the course of their lives. If they've been together for a really long time, I think it would be very appropriate for her to say, hey, something's going on. My nipples are very sensitive. I don't enjoy them being played with, touched, whatever is the case. I can't guarantee that this is going to stay this way, but it might. Is that a deal breaker for you? I think that is a much safer route that wouldn't put a giant problem, a giant hurdle over their soon-to-be marriage.
Hi, this is a comment on episode 554. You have a woman whose fuck buddy only enjoyed anal sex with her when she was not enjoying it. You left out the possibility that maybe he's got a touch of sadism, and what's getting him off is the fact that it makes her uncomfortable or hurts her. Not everyone who's sadistic is aware of it, and not everyone who's sadistic acknowledges it or tells their partner.
Hi, this is a menstruating woman calling about episode 554. I've actually had to stop it after 3 calls because I just cannot deal with how much bullshit women put up with. The first caller is having like painful anal sex and like wondering if that's okay. And then the second one's getting videotaped secretly and wondering like how to move forward with this guy, as if she should be still dating him after he's videotaping. And then the third one for 5 years is putting up with this unpleasant sensation of her partner and pretending she's, it's too much. Like, could women just please stop putting up with so much fucking bullshit from men?
And we're going to leave it there. 206-302-2064 is the number here at the Savage Lovecast. If you would like to record a question or a comment for a future show, give us a buzz, 206-302-2064. Coming up, Chicago, June 15th, I am going to be in you for a live taping of the Savage Lovecast with special guest comedian Kristen Toomey. Get your questions answered by me live in person. Savage Lovecast Live goes down at the Music Box Theater at 8 p.m. June 15th. More info and tickets at humpfilmfest.com/Chicago, and at humpfilmfest.com you can also check out upcoming tour dates for the Hump Film Fest, my porn film festival. And if you like the political rant at the beginning of the show, be sure to listen to Blabbermouth, the Strangers News and Review podcast, out every Wednesday. Follow me on Twitter at FakeDanSavage. Read Savage Love, my advice column, every week in the Chicago Reader and other newspapers all across the country. Follow Justine Cross on Twitter at Justine Plays. Savage Lovecast is produced every week by Nancy Hertunian and me and the tech-savvy at-risk youth and Nancy. We will all be back at you next week with another installment of the Savage Lovecast. Thanks for downloading.